It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, a family's fight for justice for the daughter who fell victim to a grooming gang. Jodie Sheeran was 15 when she was raped and fell pregnant. Her alleged attacker was charged, but the case never reached court. Jodie died 3 years ago. Now her family hopes that the Casey review represents a fresh opportunity to get to the truth.
We bottled it. We bottled it.
Why do you think they bottled it?
Because they were scared of being called racist.
This could be my chance now to get justice for Jodie.
Also ahead, number 10 backs the Chancellor after her tearful appearance at PMQs. We're told it was due to a personal matter, and Rachel Reeves will be working this afternoon. Her position is under scrutiny, along with the credibility of the government in the wake of last night's welfare U-turn. Plus, why Lucy Letby could face more charges as prosecutors consider new evidence relating to baby deaths and harm at the hospitals where she worked. And we'll hear tonight from the Princess of Wales, who's opened up about her cancer recovery and the pressure to crack on and get back to normal after treatment. All that to come, and much more, here on the UK Tonight. Two weeks ago, the government announced a new national inquiry into grooming gangs. Ministers were persuaded to act after a damning review by Baroness Casey, who highlighted a deep-rooted failure to treat children as children, and officials who avoided tackling the issue for fear of being branded racist. Tonight, I want to bring you the story of Jodie Sheeran. Jodie was 15 years old when she was raped in 2004. She called the police. A man was arrested and charged, but the case never reached court. Shockingly, the family never received an official reason why, but a police officer at the time suggested it was because of Jodie's lifestyle. Well, Jodie died in 2022 at the age of just 33. Following her death, her parents have been fighting for answers and campaigning for this case to be reopened, to get justice for Jodie and for the son she had as a result of that attack. I've been speaking to Jodie's son, Jaden, as well as her parents, David and Angela, and I have to warn you that you may find parts of our conversation distressing.
She was your typical young little girl. She loved singing, dancing, karaoke. Just your typical little girl, really.
David, you started to notice a pattern of behaviour with your Jodie at around 13 years of age. The first indications that she was getting involved with older men. Can you talk to me about those early signs?
She said she was going to go to school, but then she never turned up at school. And then at night she would, I'm going to my friend's house, which you think, you know, great. But then it wasn't going to a friend's. It was starting to meet older lads. And eventually she did come out and say, like, Dad, Mum, I've got a boyfriend. And you know, the warning signs start straight away. And we say, well, who is he? How old is he? And I remember he was 25.
And how old was Jodie?
She was 13.
13 at the time, yeah.
I said, oh, no. What you're saying? No, you can't do that, Jode. The police would come to our house, I mean, and the words, we've never forgot the word what they said to us. He says, let me tell you something now. Your daughter's either going to get groomed.
If she keeps doing...
If she keeps doing what she's doing, getting messy,
yeah.
She's either going to end up dead, raped, and...
Those words, I'll never forget those words.
You know, them words now still haunt me now.
Let's get on to the events of November 2004. This was when Jodie was 15, and
yeah,
she was with a group of young men of Pakistani heritage. She'd been hanging about with that group for about a year beforehand. Yeah. And this is going to be a difficult story for you to tell, but I know that you really want to talk about it because it is so pivotal to your daughter's story.
It was about 2, 3 a.m. in the morning. I had a knock on the door and 2 police officers came. They said, are you Angela? I said, yeah. They says, we've got Jodie with us. She's asking for a mum. I says, oh, have you found her then? She says, yes, I'm sorry, she's been raped. And then they took me in the room to her, and I've never seen anything like it. She was like covered in some sort of curry powder, and she was like totally, I don't know the words, she was delirious. Basically, they said she'd got that much alcohol in her system. She didn't really know if she was coming or going. And yeah, because she woke up and she found her knickers round her ankles, and she got straight on the phone to the police, and she said, I've been raped. And like I say, the police, they made some arrests. Jodie gave all the video evidence. We went to the rape suite, everything like that. We did everything, gave all the recordings, and they did arrest more than one male, but they only got the DNA of one male, and the male was arrested.
The police couldn't prove that he didn't know how old she was, even though she had been in and amongst this group of men for over a year.
And she'd been picked up from school on numerous occasions. So.
This rape charge was proceeding and you had a day in court.
Yeah.
In fact, the day before, you as a family were going to go to court to seek justice. You got a knock on the door.
Yeah, the CID and they knocked on the door. Says the CPS have dropped the charges, and that was it. What? Why? Why they dropped the charge? And they come out with because of her lifestyle. I said, she's 15. She's a kid.
She's an unreliable witness.
She's an unreliable witness. What you? I says, please, you've got me. You surely can do something about this. I mean, you said to us that you got everything you needed. DNA, videos, you got everything. And now you're telling us now that you're not going to do nothing. And I just, you get that, when you get that sinky feeling, you think, do you know, they bottled it. They bottled it.
Why do you think they bottled it?
Because they were scared of being called racist.
And at the time that all this was happening to your mum, your daughter, child sexual exploitation in Stoke-on-Trent was recognised as a problem. Yeah. In fact, they had something called Operation Sorcerer that had been set up in I beg your pardon, in 2002. That task force identified the problem and was tasked with educating younger people at risk of being exploited and preventing such exploitation. The 2014 Alexis J report into this in Rotherham highlighted that Staffordshire Police recognised child sexual exploitation was a problem in 2002 and identified 47 victims. However, it's difficult to find much evidence that Staffordshire Police successfully prosecuted cases of child sexual exploitation in the context of grooming gangs from 2002 onward. It's not to say that these cases were not brought, but they are difficult to find evidence of. In that context is your daughter.
Yeah.
Have you ever had an official explanation as to why those charges were dropped? Because, David, what you were telling me there is the word of one police officer who sat in your front room that day.
That was it.
That was it.
We never had nothing off the Crown Prosecution Service, nothing. No letter, no correspondence, no telephone call, nothing.
What they said, that was all we had.
The CPS have apologised for this. You also found out in the course of trying to push once again for justice for your daughter that actually the rape charge essentially wasn't there. It was a sexual offence
with a
charge.
Yeah.
Again, where is the paper trail or the
Yeah.
discussion with you as a family as to why that lesser charge was being brought?
Yeah.
And I've only found that out since I've been trying to seek justice for Jodie. I only found that out in the past few months that the charge was actually lessened.
In the past few months?
Yeah.
And your trial date, original trial date was 2005?
Yeah.
And we're now in 2025?
Yeah.
Yeah.
9 months after that attack, Jodie gave birth to Jayden. And Jayden, I'm very conscious that you're sitting here listening to that story because this is a story you know well. You've known about what happened to your mum and how you came into the world for a long time now. And that it's really difficult for everyone to hear. I just wonder how that is to live with. What is it like to live as the child born of rape, born of those circumstances?
I'm kind of used to it now because it's been so long, so you get used to how things are. Obviously, I know my mum did everything she could for me. When I was with her, I felt nothing but loved. I knew she could do whatever she can for me when she can. Just growing up, when I was living with my nan and granddad, I've always said to them, when I knew what was going on, what happened, I wanted to be with her and stay by her side, so I could, but not like a guard, but like a bit of protection, just, you know what I mean? It's my mum, I want to be there for her as much as I can, so I got used to it. I'd say in our school, in primary school, I was always I was questioning it, who I am, what I am, why am I with this family when
Who's my dad?
Yeah, I'm completely different to these. And my friends used to ask me in primary school, why are you different colour to your nan and granddad and things like that? Why don't you see your mum? Why don't you see your dad? But growing up without a dad, obviously I've always had my granddad, luckily, by my side as like a father figure, which has helped me out a lot, and as my nan, as well as a mother figure. But like, more as my mum, I've looked at her growing up, it was like a sister relationship, like a brother and sister.
Yeah.
The man that attacked your mum, I don't know how you refer to him.
I don't.
You don't?
I don't have many. I've got loads of words.
Any contact with him? Because as you're fighting for your mum, I would imagine you have tried to establish and get some kind of reaction.
When I found out it all happened, as I was finding out, I'd go through my mum's phone and things like that. I'd go through my nan's phone. I'd go through all my family's phone. I'd see what they're saying to each other about me because I wanted to know why I was different. And there was a certain I'd seen, and I'd got hold of him without no one knowing, and he was calling me son and things like that over the phone, saying I'm his son. He wants to meet with me and my mum. He wants to speak to me. He basically wanted to meet with me and my mum, but I didn't tell my mum at the time. She never knew I spoke to him, and
again, you're trying to protect her.
Yeah. Long story short, my mum ended up passing away, and I was in a local taxi around the area, and I was explaining to a taxi driver. I was upset. At this time I was broken. Every day I'd cry. For the first about 3 to 4 months of my mum's death, I'd cry every day. I'd find it hard to cope with things. I didn't want to work. I didn't want to do nothing. And I was in a taxi and I was just venting to it, as you do, just trying to get along with someone. And pulls up outside my house and said it was his uncle. And that was when I was like, this is when I realised I'm in a situation here where I'm in the area of the people who have done it. I can't trust people in the area. I can't use taxis to get from certain places because I don't know what's going to happen. Out of nowhere, that's my uncle. And then 2 nights later, I got a phone call of the same guy who called me his son on the phone saying, "You're nothing to do with me. When you're angry, you're going to say how you feel. I've said, I believe you've raped me mum. I'm going to say that.
Sure.
He says, don't you ever say them words to me. He says...
Do you know who I am?
Yeah. And then I saw him a couple of weeks ago, but he didn't even recognise me. I didn't know I was going to bump into him. I went to get some food after work, and I bumped into him, and he didn't even recognise me.
You'll be well aware, just a week or so ago now, Baroness Casey put out into the public domain her findings into grooming gangs, and so much of Jodie's story, there's echoes of it in that report, from the fact that right from the start, she wasn't treated as a child. She wasn't treated as a minor. This talk of reckless behaviour, being lovesick, being an unreliable witness. She was 15.
I know.
What was your reaction to Baroness Casey's findings? Because, again, you must have seen the obvious parallels with what happened to Jodie.
Do you know, I was because obviously I've been pushing for this for so long, and then when I saw that the Baroness Casey report and that the government are going to hold this national inquiry, I'm like, I'm happy because at last it's out there, and this could be my chance now to get justice for Jodie. Because, like I say, I've fought so long, and but they're on about opening cold cases, like, you know,
Secretary said could be over 1,000.
Yeah, but I'm just hoping that poor Jodie's included, because they just keep telling me she's dead, and there's nothing they can do. Just, you know, it's her word against us, but I don't want to forget Jodie. I want, you know, Jodie to be a legacy to this. Just because she's dead, it shouldn't mean that she doesn't matter. Yeah. So I'm hoping that Baroness Casey and the government, you know, will look into Jodie's case as being reopened, even though, sadly, she's no longer with us, but she should be with us because they failed her all those years ago.
Well, my thanks to Angela, David and to Jayden for sharing Jodie's story with us. We put her story to the police and to the Crown Prosecution Service. This is the reaction of Staffordshire Police telling us our condolences remain with Jodie's family. In November 2004, following an allegation of rape, we arrested and charged a man. However, the case was discontinued at court prior to trial. We met Mrs. Sheeran in both 2023 and 2024 to discuss her daughter's case. One suspect was identified, and while several reviews have been conducted, including speaking to potential witnesses and victims that Mrs. Sheeran provided contact details for, we regret that no new evidence has emerged that would allow us to take further action at this time. Since the early 2000s, we have significantly improved how we investigate child sexual exploitation. We've learned vital lessons, particularly in how we support and listen to young people, and we remain committed to ongoing improvement. We have strengthened our public protection unit and established dedicated child exploitation teams who work closely with partners across Staffordshire. Every report is treated with the utmost seriousness, and every victim is met with empathy, professionalism and respect. Meanwhile, the Crown Prosecution Service told us that race plays absolutely no role in its decision-making, a spokesperson saying the failure in 2005 to explain to Jodie and her family why her case was discontinued was wrong. This should not have happened, and we are profoundly sorry for the devastating consequences this has had. Though the records from 2005 no longer exist, we worked carefully in 2019 to review the available evidence from police files, and a separate prosecutor concluded that there was insufficient evidence to charge the suspect with rape. We wrote to Jodie explaining this decision. Subsequently, as part of our handling of a complaint in 2023, we reviewed the available evidence again and concluded that there was insufficient evidence to support a prosecution for either rape or sexual assault, which we communicated to Jodie's family. The way the CPS handles these cases has changed significantly over the last 2 decades. We have since established a dedicated, organised child sexual abuse unit to tackle these awful crimes and recruited victim liaison officers across the country so every victim has a dedicated point of contact. But we recognise these improvements bring little comfort to Jodie's family, and we continue to offer them our deepest condolences for the loss they have endured. Well, as we've been hearing tonight, Jodie and her family never got their day in court. And I can't help replaying the struggle that they had to get as far as they did. Why was the onus put on Jodie to prove her alleged attacker didn't know she was underage and she hadn't consented? She was a 15-year-old vulnerable child. Sex with a child is a crime. And it's hard to get your head around the fact that that point alone didn't see this case reach a courtroom. In her review, Baroness Casey called for adults who have sex with a child under 16 to always face a charge of rape, saying we need to see children as just that, children. And what is even harder to fathom is this story is just a snapshot of what hundreds of families up and down the UK have been living through for decades. It is expected up to 1,000 closed cases like Jodie's may now be reopened. As you heard, the Sheeran family hopes theirs is included, despite the CPS telling them that some evidence from back in 2005 is no longer available. We will continue to follow their progress here on the UK Tonight. Still to come on the programme. Number 10 backs the Chancellor and insists she is going nowhere after a tearful PMQs today. Plus, prosecutors say they are considering bringing further charges against nurse Lucy Letby. And the Princess of Wales opens up about her cancer recovery journey, calling it a rollercoaster.
We're rolling.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Downing Street has insisted the Chancellor is going nowhere and has the Prime Minister's full backing. This follows her tearful appearance in the House of Commons earlier today. Rachel Reeves appeared visibly upset as Sir Keir Starmer fielded questions on the government's welfare U-turns, refusing to rule out future tax rises or to commit to the Chancellor's future. Our political correspondent Tamara Cohen has the story.
A day after he was dramatically wrong-footed by his MPs, the Prime Minister headed to Parliament to take questions about dropping key elements of his welfare reforms. Before he even started, it was clear something was amiss with the Chancellor to his left.
The reformed welfare system that we're putting in place will be better for individuals, better for the taxpayer and better for the economy.
Kemi Badenoch went on the attack.
Sickness benefits are set to rise to £100 billion because of their mess. They cannot now reduce it. They can't reduce it because after last night's humiliating U-turn, we know he cannot control his MPs.
And then the key question, how will it be paid for?
People out there are frightened. Can he, Mr. Speaker, can he reassure them by ruling out tax rises in the autumn budget?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, she knows that no Prime Minister or Chancellor ever stands at the dispatch box and writes budgets in the future. That isn't what they did, it isn't what we do, and she knows it.
As the session went on, Rachel Reeves looked increasingly distressed and became the focus of questions.
She looks absolutely miserable. Labour MPs, yeah, she looks absolutely miserable. Labour MPs, they can point as much as they like. The fact is, Labour MPs are going on the record saying that the Chancellor is toast, and the reality is that she is a human shield for his incompetence. In January, he said that she would be in post till the next election. Will she really?
Keir Starmer didn't directly answer that one.
Well, the markets took an immediate slump at that, although the Prime Minister's team assured us afterwards that the Chancellor is going nowhere. Her spokesman said she was upset by a personal matter, but clearly the pressure is building on her as the government is left with a £5 billion hole in its finances.
U-turns on welfare were bewildering for those who'll be affected.
Most people watched on with shock. Right, how is this an appropriate way to be dealing with things that are going to affect thousands of people's lives, thousands of people's incomes, in such a short period of time, done in such a chaotic, essentially backroom way?
Later, at an event in Downing Street to celebrate Formula One, Keir Starmer couldn't escape the noise.
Prime Minister, why was the Chancellor visibly upset in the Commons today?
With Number 10 insisting he and his Chancellor are as close as ever, they both have a major challenge to regain momentum. Tamara Cohen, Sky News, Westminster.
I'm going to bring in our correspondent Rob Powell, who's in Westminster for us this evening. And Rob, all the talk today has been about the welfare and the future of the Chancellor. What's been said tonight?
Well, we don't have any further details about the reasons why the Chancellor was in tears in Prime Minister's questions. All the spokesperson is leaving it as is that it was a personal matter and they won't be going into it. Look, I think it was a difficult watch. Rachel Reeves clearly pretty distressed. I think if that had happened without the backdrop of the chaos in Parliament yesterday, the government essentially gutting their welfare bill and U-turning at the last minute to avoid defeat and an even bigger rebellion. If there wasn't that, then I think that essentially this would be probably a non-story. The difficulty for the government is that yesterday really showed that the government didn't have control over their party. It showed a sort of absolute splintering of authority from Number 10. So what the government needed to do today was come out and show it was in control. And Prime Minister's questions was essentially the main event to do that. And I think set against that context, politics is heavily image-driven. This was the last thing that they would have wanted to happen. I think a little bit earlier we heard from a government minister. He spoke to our colleague Sophie Ridge and she asked him how the Chancellor was doing.
There's been a lot of discussion about Rachel Reeves at Prime Minister's questions. Is she all right? Is she OK?
She is. She's working hard in Downing Street this afternoon. I've known Rachel Reeves for many, many years. She's extraordinarily resilient, highly able woman who has been doing an excellent job as Chancellor and will continue to.
Have you spoken to her?
I haven't spoken to her since, due to various commitments that I've had during the afternoon, but I know she's in Downing Street and is fine.
It was interesting in that interview with Nick Thomas-Symonds a little bit earlier in it, he unprompted said Rachel Reeves will remain in post. He linked that, in that answer anyway, to stability of the markets and the government maintaining stability and fiscal stability. So clearly, I think, as Tamara was getting at in the piece there, that there was maybe a worry that the fact that the Prime Minister in PMQs didn't explicitly guarantee Rachel Reeves' future, well, everything looked like it was starting to shake a little, and maybe that was having an effect on, say, the cost of UK government borrowing, which has been rising through the day today. So I think that is why you are getting from the Minister and also from Number 10 a really concerted attempt to stand behind the Chancellor now.
Rob, thank you. Rob Powell, the latest from Westminster for us tonight. The Crown Prosecution Service is considering further criminal charges against Lucy Letby. The CPS saying it was past more evidence from detectives investigating the child killer who is serving a whole life sentence for murdering 7 children and attempting to murder 7 more. Ashna Hurlak has the details.
I think it's worth remembering that we are talking here about 2 separate investigations that Cheshire Police have been carrying out ever since that conviction of Lucy Letby. This particular allegations, this set of allegations that is being presented before the CPS refers to the deaths and the collapses of babies at the Countess of Chester Hospital, but also Liverpool Women's Hospital too, between 2015 and 2016. The Crown Prosecution Service have said today they've received what they describe as a full file of evidence from police, asking them to consider further allegations at both of those hospitals. Now, as you make reference to, this news comes after what we found out yesterday, that 3 members of the senior leadership team at the Countess of Chester Hospital had, between 2015 and 2016, had been arrested on Monday on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter. That's to do with that secondary investigation that Cheshire Police are pursuing. That investigation is focused on the corporate manslaughter side of things, looking into the behaviour, the practices of senior staff members at that particular hospital, the Countess of Chester, looking at their decision-making, the actions, the inactions that they took with regards to the number of deaths of babies that they had during that period of time. Those 3 individuals are all currently on bail whilst those investigations are ongoing. And it's worth saying that when it comes to Lucy Letby herself, she has consistently challenged her conviction for those 7 counts of murder, but also 7 counts of attempted murder too. The CPS, they now say they are considering the evidence that's been presented before them to determine whether to bring any further criminal charges.
The Princess of Wales has opened up about her recovery from cancer during a visit to Colchester Hospital. Meeting patients and staff, Catherine spoke about putting on a brave face and the pressure to crack on after treatment. It was her first public engagement since cancelling an appearance at Royal Ascot a fortnight ago. Our royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills was there.
Most people didn't know that she was coming. The princess turning heads as she arrived in Colchester, wanting to hear more about their cancer wellbeing centre, but also make sure that we heard a few things about how she's feeling in recovery.
You put on a sort of brave face, stoicism through treatment. Treatment's done.
Yeah.
So I can crack on and get back to normal again, but actually the phase afterwards is really, is a really difficult journey. You're not necessarily in the clinical team any longer, but you're not able to function normally at home as you perhaps once used to.
While we have got used to a new level of openness from Kate, being this personal on a public visit is still unusual. But clearly, among other patients and volunteers, she felt safe.
But it's life-changing. For anyone through, whether from the first diagnosis or, since post-treatment and things like that, it is a life-changing experience for both the individual and the patient, but also for families as well. And actually, it sometimes goes sort of unrecognised. I think you don't necessarily, particularly because the first time, you don't appreciate how much impact it is going to have. And actually, you have to find your new normal. Yes. And that takes time. And it's a road trip. It's not one smooth circuit, which you expect it to be. But the reality is, it's not. You'll go through hard things.
Her words feel particularly strong coming 2 weeks after she didn't go to Royal Ascot and all of the reporting around that. The palace insisting at the time that there was always going to have to be some flexibility around the engagements that she does now. But this is the first time that we've heard from her that there are some days where she can't do what she used to. Getting her hands dirty still wasn't a problem. Planting roses named after her in the centre's garden. Just how important mind, body and spirit are for recovery is her big message right now.
Very nice to meet you. What's your name?
But also you could hear a subtle plea for maybe more understanding for her and her family and others going through difficult times. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News in Colchester.
Still to come here on the UK tonight, former Health Secretary Matt Hancock defending the government's handling of the pandemic in care homes as he addresses the COVID inquiry. We'll bring you the details. Plus, an investigation finds a catastrophic failure led to a fire which shut down Heathrow Airport for 16 hours. The former Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, has been accused of presiding over a cull of older people during the coronavirus pandemic. The latest phase of the COVID inquiry is focusing on the care sector and measures to safeguard residents. Mr. Hancock told the inquiry it was an impossible situation. A health correspondent, Ashish Joshi, has this report.
The last time Kathy saw her father Michael alive was through the ground floor window of his care home. He died the next morning.
You don't imagine that your relatives' last hours are going to be spent in that way.
Kathy has taken legal action against the government, and the High Court agreed that Matt Hancock's decision to discharge thousands of asymptomatic patients into care homes was indeed illegal.
There is nothing that Hancock could say now that would make any difference. He made appalling decisions and he tried to pretend that he didn't, tried to pretend that everything was all right, even after the ruling from my judicial review. I think it's despicable.
The former Health Secretary returned to the COVID inquiry today.
And nothing but the truth.
And this truth is the only thing affected families want to hear.
At the time you stood on that press conference, did you believe it to be true when you said we had tried to put a protective ring around the care homes?
Yes, and I will stress the word tried. We were trying to do everything that we possibly could. We were in bleak circumstances.
But Matt Hancock's assertion has been challenged.
One person in particular said he blatantly lied about the situation with care homes. There was no blanket of protection. We were left to sail our own ships. He wasn't heartfelt. It felt like we were the sacrifice, a cull of older people who could no longer contribute to the society.
We were all pulling as hard as we possibly could to save lives. That's what I meant by saying that we tried to throw a protective ring around. Of course, it wasn't perfect. It was impossible. It was an unprecedented pandemic.
Matt Hancock has appeared here at the COVID inquiry many times before, and he's been accused of being insensitive and arrogant. And today's appearance will do nothing to diminish that criticism. He doubled down on the government's decision to discharge patients into care homes, saying it was the least worst option. And he said it in an inquiry room full of people who had lost loved ones in care homes. 18 elderly residents died from COVID at David Crabtree's 2 care homes at the start of the pandemic.
It was a question of what is the least worst solution.
Residents, carers and families want to know why.
We had cared for these people for 3 and 5 years prior to COVID coming, and to watch them die with no oxygen in care homes was appalling. I hope we've learnt lessons. It's clear that Mr. Hancock has not learnt anything.
We just need to check your pulse.
Matt Hancock insists he was doing an impossible job at a difficult time. He says he tried to protect the NHS and save lives. But the question remains, at what cost? Ashish Joshi, Sky News, at the COVID inquiry.
In other news today, the former head of the Royal Navy has been sacked after an investigation into his behaviour found he fell far short of values and standards expected of service personnel. Sir Ben Key stepped back from his role as First Sea Lord in May over allegations of inappropriate behaviour. It's understood the investigation looked into an alleged relationship with a female colleague. He says he deeply regrets his conduct. A report into the fire that shut down Heathrow back in March has found it was caused by a catastrophic but preventable technical fault, which was first detected 7 years ago. The airport was closed for 16 hours, disrupting the journeys of more than 250,000 passengers. Our science and technology editor Tom Clark has the details.
The fire that cut the power that shut down Heathrow, that affected 1,300 flights carrying nearly 300,000 passengers around the world, was entirely preventable. The report into the outage at National Grid's North Hyde substation found that moisture build-up that led to a catastrophic transformer failure was picked up 7 years previously and not acted on.
When they identified the moisture levels, which they did, and great that those were identified as part of regular testing, what got missed then was the action to take that out of service and replace it. And they didn't pick up then in later cycles that these high moisture readings were not sort of acted upon at that point in time.
The moisture in question caused a short circuit in something called a transformer bushing, which ignited oil within it, which in turn spread to a larger tank of oil insulating the 275 kilovolt supergrid transformer. The resulting fire took the substation offline. National Grid says it's since reviewed its maintenance processes and confirmed no similar faults have been missed across their network. While a maintenance failure was the cause, it does raise questions about our incredibly reliable but ageing grid infrastructure. It's remarkable to think that the transformers at North Hyde were commissioned when Harold Wilson was Prime Minister. The moon landings hadn't even happened yet. But what's even more remarkable is that by the hardware standards of our national grid, these things aren't even that old. National Grid doesn't publish data on its supergrid transformers, but figures from 2008 suggest half, maybe more than 58 years old, some maybe getting on for 70. Energy regulator Ofgem has now ordered an independent audit of National Grid's critical assets as part of its investigation into the incident. But there are questions too about the resilience of Heathrow.
It's not fair to say the blame lies entirely with National Grid. Grid failures will and always do happen. Heathrow was built in the 1960s with 3 fully independent power supplies, and actually the airport can run entirely off one of those. So it's entirely wrong for Heathrow to say that this couldn't have been avoided.
The report recommends improvements to the way power networks and critical national infrastructure like airports communicate to ensure a local failure doesn't have global consequences. Tom Clark, Sky News.
Coming up on the UK tonight, we're going to speak to the artist behind this wonder wall of bucket hats, paying tribute to Oasis ahead of the start of their reunion tour this weekend. And in the sport, we're in the story of the 3 British winners at Wimbledon, Emma Raducanu setting up a meeting with women's world #1, Arina Sabalenka.
I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
We'd been warned that we would meet people in the lowest moment of their lives.
Their story is one of fundamental American failure. Well, a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club, but I have to say there are more media here than there are supporters.
We love Trump!
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here, but the anger too. This is just the audience that Joe Biden wanted.
Is this the moment to reform gun laws?
You know, it's easy to go to politics.
But it's important, it's at the heart of the issue.
For all the talk of a toned-down, humbled Trump, yes, maybe there was just a little less rhetoric, a little less divisiveness, but in the end it was the same rhythm, the same speech, the same man.
All them people that died in Russia and Ukraine, they'd still be alive today if Donald Trump was president.
If it was my wish, have a businessman that's strong like Trump, but maybe just doesn't say as much, you know?
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What we've been allowed to see over here is a humanitarian corridor. Free wherever you get your news.
A young American medical student is making remarkable things happen.
I've seen a lot of difficult things, and honestly, it breaks my heart. These children don't deserve that.
I don't think there's a single Arab I know who isn't seriously disturbed by what's going on.
And so they gathered for this wonder of nature.
I'm very excited right now.
This is an extraordinary moment beyond anything I could have expected. Sky News, get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Hello, welcome back. You're watching the UK Tonight. Still to come, we're going to go live to Cardiff as Oasis fever sweeps the city ahead of Friday night's first comeback gig. But up before that, another very busy day of sport. Here's Chris with the details.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
I hope that more and more women start coaching. I think it's getting better already, but I think the balance needs to be better.
It's a problem not only on the international stage, but at every level in the women's game. We need more women coaching in the sport.
We have to keep coming up with creative ways to make sure we've got the right number of female candidates coming through. I'm slightly worried about that for the future.
I think it also helps that women see women on the stage, on the pitch and next to the pitch and have examples, because what you see you can be.
Historically, coaching roles in women's football have been dominated by men. Over the past 10 years, the game has seen a steady increase of women in coaching positions. But are opportunities for women on the touchline growing at the same rate the rest of the game on the pitches? And why are there not more women in the dugout? In 2009 and 2013, only a quarter of head coaches for nations at the Women's Euros were women. Steadily, this number has increased, but so have the teams in the competition. At the Euros in 2022, 6 out of the 16 managers were women, and ahead of this summer's Euros, that number has only increased by 1.
It's improving, but we're moving into the right direction, but we have to put extra effort in that, and that's what many federations do. I know the FA does that. UEFA's working on it, FIFA's working on it. Women, I hope they take opportunities too, but we also give them opportunities and give them an opportunity to educate and become coaches. And I think it really helps when we also, women support women.
Just going to do the same.
There's all this preconceived notions that we're having to deal with, and it lives, unfortunately, in the women's game and the men's game because it's what you know. And unfortunately, I was a player who had a similar experience. I had a female coach, and I had this idea of who the best coaches were because that's what we've been told and we're used to. So there's still a lot of work to do. I think that this must be a history-making tournament in terms of how many women there are actually coaching, which is a problem. We've got to keep reminding people and highlighting it because it's not just in the Euros and national teams. You look across the top women's leagues around the world and it's a major problem.
The 2024-25 season of the WSL ended with 6 out of 12 women in head coach roles, including an interim manager. Since 2018, when the WSL became a fully professional league, women have made up half of the head coaches, a number which has been largely consistent ever since.
I've always been interested in the tactical side of the game. Still, at that moment in time, I wasn't thinking that I was going to be a coach. There wasn't enough role models back then, so I couldn't see myself doing it.
How hard is it for women in coaching to get the exposure?
It's still harder, I think, for a woman than for a man at the moment where we are in time. Women's football was banned for 50 years in the UK, so there's just 50 years that we've missed out on. And during that time, there's been more men.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Well, it's nearly time. On Friday, nearly 16 years after they last performed together, Oasis returned to the stage as they kick off their reunion tour in Cardiff. To celebrate this occasion, one artist is paying tribute to the duo in true Gallagher fashion. This giant mural has been made from 3,000 black and white bucket hats, a style that became synonymous with the brothers in the 90s. Plenty of those will be on display in Cardiff throughout the weekend, I'm sure. Aptly named Wonderwall, the tribute was unveiled in the Welsh capital ahead of this weekend's gigs. Of course, the brothers playing in Cardiff Friday and Saturday. Let's now speak to the artist who was pictured there, and the artist behind it, Nathan Wyburn. Hello, Nathan.
Hi.
Good to talk to you. Where did this idea come from?
You know, I tend to make a lot of artwork using unconventional materials, and I comment on things as they happen in the world. And I could not let this moment pass, knowing that they chose Cardiff to start their tour, and it's one of the biggest comebacks in history. So, yeah, and it had to be bucket hats. It just had to be.
Do you know what? I actually got a text from a friend today who is going at the weekend and said, oh, you know, are we too old to wear the 90s gear anymore? I was like, absolutely not. Get it out of the wardrobe if you've got it. Buy it second hand. Everybody will be dressing as they did in the 90s. It really is going to be such a nostalgic occasion. What's been the reaction to the mural?
Yeah, it really is. You're right. And yeah, like you said, anybody just throw those 90s clothes on and go and have a good time. The reaction has been phenomenal so far. It's in St David's Shopping Centre here in Cardiff. So anybody that does come down this weekend, please go along and have a little look for yourself. You don't quite get the full scale of it until you're there in person, you know. So, and it's even for me, I've impressed myself with this one. So I'm very pleased.
Yeah, it's almost 16 feet high. That's almost the height of a double-decker bus, and it stretches more than 20 feet wide. How long did it take?
Yeah, it took me nearly 4 days to complete, and it's 3,000 of them there. So I had a bit of repetitive strain on my hand from staple gunning them all down, as you can see there. But yeah, you kind of suffer for your artwork, right? And it's definitely one of my proudest moments.
Yeah, it's a real labour of love. I'm sure you've been getting real-time reviews from people who have turned up to see it. It's going to be a real focal point for content creators going to the concert. I'm sure the Gallagher brothers won't agree with that, but fans turning up to have their pictures with that as well. I can't imagine the Gallagher brothers are much liking content creators. It's not really their style, is it? But have you had a review from the boys themselves?
I actually haven't, no, but I know that their management absolutely love it. They got in touch with me on social media, and they have gifted me some tickets to go on Saturday because I didn't actually manage to get them first time around. So I'm very happy. And also Noel's daughter just put it on Instagram. So yeah, thrilled that we're kind of getting there. Maybe we'll get a message at some point.
Oh, I tell you what, that labour of love was well worth it. So many people now who can get tickets thinking, if only we'd had this idea. But of course, they don't quite have your artistic flair and creative talent. So you're going on Saturday. What's the excitement in the city like? Because there's been so much, well, there's been years of build-up, hasn't there, to this moment? Will they, won't they? They are. It's going to be this Friday. What's it like in Cardiff right now?
It's heathen. It's absolutely crazy here because I actually live near the stadium as well, so we could hear them rehearsing the other day as well. They were here a few days ago rehearsing, and yeah, I think Cardiff is just completely geared up for it. You can see all the fancy dress shops with cardboard cutouts of them in the windows, and there's merch stands everywhere. There's a shop here with just their merch in. It's going to be a wonderful experience, I think, for fans coming into the city this weekend.
Oh, well, a great way to kick off. I also have a friend who's got tickets for September, and they said, I hope they make it that far, because notoriously they do fall out on tour, don't they? So I think people who have got tickets in September might be a little bit nervous, but you should be all right for Cardiff this weekend. Well, listen, congratulations. It's caught their attention. It's ahead of a brilliant weekend in Cardiff. Oasis kicking off their reunion tour. Nathan, thank you so much. Nathan there, the artist behind that Wonderwall portrait at St David's in Cardiff, David Wyburn. Right, let's have a quick look at the weather, shall we?
The ideal atmosphere, whatever the altitude. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
The rest of the week, cooler and fresher. It's going to turn more unsettled, especially over the weekend. Largely fine for this evening, but there'll be a few showers in the north and west. They will fade away to leave most places dry and clear overnight, but cloud and rain will reach the northwest later. That wind's going to pick up there as well. It's going to be much more comfortable for sleeping tonight, which is good news. England and Wales, mainly dry tomorrow morning with some sunny spells. Central and southern parts of Ireland looking pretty similar, but some heavy showers may develop there as well. Elsewhere, cloudier, showery outbreaks of rain moving in from the west. It's going to be warm in the south. Northern Britain can expect showery rain throughout the afternoon, locally thundery, whereas southern parts are going to stay fine.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
That's all from the UK tonight. We'll return tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Up next, it is The World with Anna Bottic. See you tomorrow.